Today's top story from the perspective of someone who's there.
You are looking live.
This just in.
Not my beat.
Of course, the top story of the day is the NBA Finals tonight, but we're going to put that on the back burner for a second as we welcome in Tim Bontemps from ESPN. Of course, he wrote for the Washington Post as well. Tim, welcome back. Appreciate your time as always, sir.
Hey, great to talk to you, Craig. How you doing, man?
I'm good. Although I'm confused, and you're someone that I want to try to unconfuse myself with, or we're just going to be confused together because this Desmond Bane trade over the weekend, you had a great write-up on a bunch of different angles of this on ESPN.com, and I'll just start here, man. Like, my reaction to this was, you've got to be kidding me, in terms of the return that they got for Desmond Bane. Them, of course, being the Memphis Grizzlies, who get a bunch of unprotected first-round picks, 2 rotation players, and a pick swap for Desmond Bane. And this is a year after Mikal Bridges. Like, same thing. And I think Bridges is a better player than Bane. Is this just what, like, decent players in the league cost now? Or is the reaction around the league, is there confusion around the league in terms of what the market is for a player on the trade market?
I mean, I think you have to sort of look at these situations individually, right? So if you go back to the Mikal Bridges trade last year, he was a very good player on a very good value contract, right? And so he slotted right into New York's salary structure where they could make a trade for basically only sending out Bojan Bogdanovic, who has a potential, maybe a career-ending ankle injury during the playoffs. And so they can add a really good player to their roster without sacrificing anything off their current roster, right? Now, was that a good value proposition long term? That's a much different conversation to have. But that is the thinking that went into that deal, right? This Desmond Bane trade is a similar sort of deal. You look at it for Orlando, this is a team that was dead last in three-point shooting, had very little offensive creation, desperately needed a perimeter scorer and shooter. Desmond Bane's a 41% three-point shooter for his career. He can play point. He's a great guy. He can also is a very credible defender, really strong, rugged defender. So he slots into what has been one of the best defensive teams in the league and gives them that offensive weapon that they need without sacrificing any defense. So from a fit standpoint, he's a great fit on a long-term deal that they can slot in and have him as part of this core going forward. So Orlando, a team that has been extraordinarily conservative with their draft picks, has not gone in for anybody, identified Desmond Bane as the player they wanted to go get, and went and got him, right? And got a guy who's, I think, 26, 27, like in his prime, going to be right in line with Jalen Suggs and Paolo Banchero and Franz Wagner going forward. Now, will that work out long-term? I think it's going to remain to be seen. And I think you can look at the Indiana Pacers as the upside of this deal, right? A year and a half ago, the Pacers traded for Pascal Siakam. I think they traded 3 firsts in a swap.
Yep, it was 3.
Just 3 firsts. Yeah. Right. So that was a trade at the time that people said, that's a lot of firsts to give up for Pascal Siakam to then give him a max contract. How is this going to go? Is this really a deal you make if you're Indiana, right? Pacers made the conference finals last year. They're 2 wins away from a title this year. There's nobody saying anything other than that was an amazing trade for the Pacers, right? It leveled that team up and gave them a chance to compete for a title. Desmond Bane has the ability to potentially be that same kind of fit for Orlando. Or, to your point, Craig, if you go back to the Mikal Bridges deal, if Orlando, which hasn't got out of the first round of the playoffs in 15 years, by the way, is a first-round out team next year or never gets out of the second round the next couple of years, then you're going to look at it and say, well, this maybe is more like the Mikal Bridges trade where, yes, the Knicks made the conference finals, but they gave up all this stuff. They don't really have a way to get better, and they feel like a team that's sort of maxed out in terms of their overall ceiling, right? So I think only time will tell about where the fit of this trade is and where it lands in terms of whether it was the right thing to do long-term or not. But what I think you do have to do is in each of these instances, whether it's the Rudy Gobert trade or the Donovan Mitchell trade or the Mikal Bridges trade or this trade or the Siakam trade, you have to sort of look at it through the prism of the specific team and the specific player that's involved and the motivations that go into why the deal is made. And it's why you have sort of these wildly varying value structures on a lot of these different trades, where a guy like Desmond Bane goes for 4 firsts in a swap, who is a very good player but hasn't made an all-star team yet. And Kevin Durant, who we'll probably talk about next, is probably not going to go for a package that looks like that, despite being Kevin Durant, right? For a whole other set of reasons.
Right. Yeah, I definitely want to get to the Durant piece of this in a second and what this means for the market. This Tim Bontemps is with us, and he wrote about all this again at ESPN.com. I guess, like, I hear you, and I think you make a great point in terms of the fit with Bane, and the Siakam piece was something I thought of as well. Like, he is the perfect fit. If you were to identify who could help the Orlando Magic, Desmond Bane would be one of the top names you would think of the archetype of player they needed. I guess where I struggle with this, Tim, is if I had asked you on Saturday, the day before this trade, hey, Desmond Bane is going to get traded tomorrow. What's the return? I don't think you would have said 4 first-round picks, a pick swap, plus 2 rotation players. And by the way, KCP, a champion who brought some real veteran leadership to that team. And,
see, this is, not to interrupt, Craig, but this is sort of the part of the calculus of the trade, right? Like, to say that Cole Anthony and KCP are rotation players is a little strong, right? Cole Anthony is a okay backup guard who's on an expiring contract and is in the deal to make the money work. And frankly, Kentavious Caldwell-Pope is a guy who is on a negative contract after a rough year last year, and it was part of the return in this trade is getting off of KCP's money.
So you almost look at that as like they're getting like the extra first round, like it's almost like it's 2 first rounders plus a 2 first rounder penalty, 1 for each of those guys.
Or maybe, I mean, more like probably 3 and 1. Like, Cole Anthony isn't negative. He's just a neutral. Like, he's just an expiring deal to make the money work. You could probably flip him for a second or something. But really, this is a combination of the Magic getting a player who perfectly fits their team while also moving on from a guy in KCP that was not a good fit last year and was not on a contract that was seen as a value one.
Got it.
Around the league with the way he played. Which is, again, is why each of these deals, it's not like there's a, like the NFL famously has the trade value chart for the draft, right? Where it's like you can say, like, if you want to trade for the number 1 pick and it's like 1,000 points or whatever, you give this combination of stuff to get to the 1,000 points. It doesn't really work like that with these things because there's so many different variables at play. And I'm not sitting here saying that, there are plenty of people in the league who agree with you and think that the Magic gave up too much, and they may have. But they also, the East is wide open in the wake of Jason Tatum's torn Achilles. And if the Orlando Magic are in the conference finals next year and have a chance to make the finals, and Desmond Bane is scoring 22 a game in the playoffs and hitting 40% from 3, it's going to be hard to look at that trade and say it didn't work, And like that's where, to your point, they identified a guy who fit their team. They aggressively went and got him, and they did so. And frankly, the most surprising thing about it is that the Orlando Magic, a team that hadn't actively acquired a player in a trade, as in they targeted a player and got him back in a deal. Not that they didn't get him as part of a deal setting out a veteran player for assets. The last time they did that was when they traded for Markelle Fultz in February 2019.
Wow.
So this is not a team that has been aggressively trying to pursue players in trade over the past 6.5 years. So the most surprising thing about this was not even that 4 picks were traded for Desmond Bane. It was that the Orlando Magic were the ones trading the 4 picks for him.
Right.
But they talked about after the season, their 3-point shooting stunk. They had to go get some shooting. They had to get some playmaking. Desmond Bane became available. They identified him, and they went and got him.
No, that when you put it that way, it makes a lot more sense for sure. And obviously, the correct answer ultimately is like, well, if there was another team that was willing to give similar or just a little bit less, and this is what got it done, like that that is what a market is ultimately. And that does bring us to the Kevin Durant piece of this. I'm sure there are now what, 4 teams really that we're looking at. The 3 that your colleague Shams Charania reported that Durant would definitely sign an extension with on Saturday night. Plus the Minnesota Timberwolves are still poking around as well, and we could see how that potentially goes down. They've all probably got different valuations on what Kevin Durant is worth at 37 years old. What's the latest you're hearing on what Durant wants, how much that matters, and then ultimately the return that Phoenix might get here?
I mean, it matters to some degree, but Phoenix has, I think, made it clear that they're going to make the best deal they can make. And, it's not like Kevin's going to end up in a bad situation. Well, teams that are trying to trade for him are good teams, or are going to be good teams in San Antonio's case, most likely. And I think the question just becomes who's going to be the most motivated to try to get a deal done, and will they give enough that, especially in light of this Bane trade, will Matt Ishbia, the owner of the Suns, decide it's enough to send Kevin Durant packing? I think that's really what it's going to come down to. And I think we'll know between now and the draft where this is going to land. And, like I wrote in that piece, I think, we're going to see a trade happen. If it does, it probably isn't going to be as much as what Memphis just got for Desmond Bane. And I think, the Suns have to sort of, either wrap their heads around that and make the best deal they can make, or decide they've got to try to make things work with Kevin going forward. And, it's going to be interesting to see where that lands. So I would think with all the chatter that's gone on and where they are at on the trade, I think the expectation will be that they're going to, get this thing over the finish line and send Kevin elsewhere and start to reorient the roster after what's been a pretty failed experiment the last couple of years.
What's up, kiddos? It's your boy Clinton Yates from ESPN. It's the Hoffman Show on the Team 980. Tell your mama I said what's up.